I'm born in Miami, Jackson Memorial Hospital. I would love to say I grew up my whole life in Dade County, but I did not. My family's from Homestead, Florida City. I mean, before you get to the Keys, that's where we are. And my dad wanted to build a different life for us. He wanted to come out of that community. If anybody knows that area, very used to be a very impoverished area. It's now starting to flourish. But we left. My dad joined the military. I'm a military brat. We've had the fortune to live in Louisiana, Kansas, Texas, Germany. And I came back to Florida my last 2 years of high school at South Dade Senior High down in Dade County. I started out my career, honestly, working for a nonprofit called Centro Campesino. I tutored migrant students whose parents did not speak English. And I'm a AmeriCorps kid. So I had the opportunity to go to college. I'm also a teen mom, which is why I enjoy talking to young ladies. My son, Corey, is 27 years old. I got pregnant my senior year of high school, and life changed drastically for me. Everything I thought I was going to do, the plan changed, but the mission didn't, right? I think God has a plan for us whatever you believe in. And working for Centro Campesino taught me so much about not just my experience as a Black woman, but working with families of immigrants and seeing how they were treated in this country when you don't speak the language. And I was very much welcomed in by a huge Latin community that didn't just see me as a teen mom, but saw me as a person. So I made some really good friendships that I've kept along the years back down in Homestead through my travels. So my mentor told me, you are so good with community service. Like, for you to have a baby and you're a teen yourself, I was 19, you've done amazing work in this community. And the way you talk to people and relate, why don't you go into public service? And I thought, man, I wanted to go work on Capitol Hill. I wanted to go into politics, had all these dreams playing basketball. And it got really real for me, because when you have a child, what you want to do and what you need to do are two different things. So most people say, how did you come into criminal justice? I needed a job with good benefits. So I went into criminal justice. I started out working for the state of Florida. I worked as a correctional officer at a maximum security prison. Ooh, talk about learning communication. I think here I am 25 years later. I've never done a Toastmasters, never went to any of these schools. I tell people, when I teach the art of public speaking, it was thanks to the inmates, because I learned very early on in leadership, you do not run any facility that has over 2,000 inmates and it's less of you. You run it through cooperation with them. And that has a lot to do with your verbal skills, how you treat people, how you talk to people. That can keep you safe, right? When people don't have their life on the line, they can be reckless with their words and how they communicate. So my foundation through working with corrections and being in a facility with inmates who have committed some serious crimes that are never going to go home, it taught me a lot on how to survive, but also how to see beyond a person's crimes and what they did and just treat them like a human being. So I got promoted to the rank of sergeant. I left the male facility and they assigned me to a female facility. This is going to come full circle when I talk about the experiences with Mean Girls. I went to work with the female at their prison, and I was begging to go back and work with the men. Who knew female inmates could be so difficult? It was a very challenging time. A friend of mine who said, look, you know what, working for the state is very complicated. Let's go work for the county. So I was a little reluctant to leave Dade County. It was my home, but I took a ride and it was history. The recruiter made me get out of the car, and 25 years later, I'm here. I started working with the Department of Detention. So I went into work corrections with BSO in their jail facility downtown Fort Lauderdale. Still faced with some of the same challenges working in the jail, learned to use my communication skills. And I had to switch gears and say, what am I doing? There's a lot of people that are coming into the institutions. And by the time they get here, for some, it's too late. There are some people who are never going home. I want to be on the front end of encouraging and helping people before they get to this place. So I decided I wanted to go into law enforcement. I went back to Dade County. I became cross-certified. So in my profession, you call it dual certification. I am also a law enforcement officer, and I worked in my first city, the city of Oakland Park. I was the first Black female to work in the city of Oakland Park. They were absorbed by the county, and that was pretty challenging because everybody was staring at me my first day at work. Talk about a glass ceiling. And they were walking on eggshells on how to deal with this woman. And at the time I came into law enforcement, there was only 5% women in my field. That's important, and it'll lead into how women treat each other in the workplace. When you think of 5%, it's basically a male-dominated environment, and it's a paramilitary organization. So when you don't have many women that are empowered or up in the rank structure, it really shapes and forms the climb for women to get to the top, and how sometimes we can be pitted against one another in these industries. So from working in the city of Oakland Park, I had a lot of good officers, sergeants take me under their wings, and we're a deputy sheriff's office, but we were surrounded by Fort Lauderdale PD, and we had a lot of people that just kind of poured into me, but it was the men who poured into me, which again was very interesting because I expected women that are small in numbers, when we get to see each other, I thought it was going to be like, come here, let me show you what to do. Let me show you the pitfalls. Complete opposite. I had men that saw value in me. I was a hard worker. Having a child very young, you just learn to grind. You learn to hustle, you learn to survive and pay your bills. And I just was up for any challenge that came my way, because you're always trying to outrun the narrative that you weren't going to do anything with your life. And for me, I'm type A personality, recovering from being a control freak, but I take great pride in the work that I do. So one thing I noticed with men don't have those petty traits sometimes that us women can have, right? And men, I don't care if they're not okay with a gender or a race. If they see value in you, men like to win. Look at sports. They're going to recruit the best of the best. And if you can help move that ball across the line and score, they're good. Women, I found in my profession, we could sack our own quarterback. And we're like, we're on the same team. What are you doing? What are you doing? And I found great comfort in aligning with the men, where I realized later in my career that wasn't probably the right thing, but I did it as a self-preservation and a protective mode, because once we feel attacked, our walls come up. And when the walls come up, it's hard to come down. So in law enforcement, in addition to having these adversities in the workplace, you got to understand we're seeing death. I did not work in very easy cities. I worked in the city of Pompano Beach, Deerfield, Oakland Park, where there were shootings, robberies. I worked midnights, and nothing good happens after dark. That's what my mom used to say, and I became a cop on midnight shift. She was right. I thought she was wrong when I was partying in Miami Beach. She was 1000% right. And it really hit home for me, because now it's survival. I have a son who's in elementary school. I'm a single mom, and my goal is to make it across the finish line as a law enforcement officer, come home in one piece, and never leave somebody to take care of my son. That was my one ask. Please let me live long enough to see my son become a man and not leave him on anybody else. So in the workplace, I made sure I was super vigilant. I made sure I learned as much as I could, but I also was super immersed in the community, and I learned a lot about civic engagement and helping one another. So from that space, I moved on. Some of my male superiors were like, you need to interview for a detective. You have the skill set. I used to do small vice crimes undercover. They started me out doing prostitution stings, and that is so common for women. They think all of us should start out doing undercover prostitution stings, but we dealt with a lot of those vice crimes. I started buying narcotics when there was street buys. They don't really do that anymore, but it helped evolve me because I loved being in plays. I was in drama theater, and I thought that's what I would do. So I said, you know what, God, you got a sense of humor. I guess I get to do a little bit of acting through law enforcement. So I got to take on a lot of roles. From that space, it brought attention my way. I interviewed for the position of a detective, and I came out #1 on the list. And let me tell you, I had guys who I competed against congratulate me. I had women say, oh, she only got it for this reason or that reason. And it was very disappointing because I thought we were supposed to root for one another. So I went on to work in the city of Pompano Beach. And it was 22 men in this city. It's the largest city in Broward County, and it makes up 1/3 of the crime. So just think about that. Majority of the crime comes out of this city I'm now going to work in. I was up for the challenge. I knew it was busy. You have a lot of cases. And there was one female out of the 22 detectives. So my previous boss, his logic was put the chick with the chick, right? It makes sense. Well, a woman can train a woman. He put me with this woman, worst experience ever. She taught me nothing. Every time I asked questions, she didn't want to answer. She was like, write it later. She just was very relentless. Why are you so friendly? Why are you smiling at everybody? How do you know all these people? And it was like, what is happening? Like, I thought me and her being the only woman, there would be camaraderie. It got so bad until I went to my supervisor. I said, you got to take me out of training with her. He goes, you've only been with her 2 weeks. I said, I can't do this. Move me. I will go desk to desk and ask questions until I get it. I'm a fast learner, but that I cannot do. And he says, you know what? I think you got this. So he removed me. And from that day on, this woman, I understood now from a more educated perspective, it wasn't me personally. She was the only woman in a group of 20 some odd men. And I came in and took that one thing that made her feel special in that unit. And when you're the only in a room, you kind of feel like that's your claim to fame and that's what keeps you there. To see someone who has the same gender come in and probably have a skill set that you don't have. I quickly became the interviewer. If somebody wouldn't confess or wouldn't talk, they would go get Renee and I would come in and talk to them. Now, remember, I said I worked in a prison. You got nothing but all day long to learn about manipulation, read body language. And I just became a very effective interviewer. And also, I think some of that skill set now that I'm older and wiser, I was arrogant back then and I just thought I was it. I was the woman that everybody called to get information. A lot of it was emotional intelligence. I learned to see beyond what the crime was they committed in that particular day. And I would ask them questions like, what happened to you? Where are your parents? And grown men would cry because nobody ever asked. They only want to know what you did. But when people ask what made you like this, that was a very, very profound moment for some of the people I interviewed. And from that space of trust, I was able to help walk them through what was going to happen. You're going to jail anyways, but this could be an opportunity to self-assess and start over, because if you're living and breathing, I don't care what you did, how long you got sentenced to, there's always an opportunity to start anew wherever you are. So from that space, I was asked to go to our gang unit. 2013, the Broward Sheriff's Office got its first female in the gang unit. And 2013, most people are like, what? I could tell you, I still travel places in the country now as a captain, and they still don't have women in their units. I thought I was going to be hazed. I thought I was going to be treated poorly by these men in this unit. I can't tell you, they embraced me. They're still my brothers to this day. It was a very diverse group of men. I had one of my partners are Greek, Honduran, Black American. One looks like the guy on Duck Dynasty, a very country boy who wore camouflage every day. And then you bring a Black girl into the mix. When you see all of us having lunch, people would stare because it absolutely did not make sense. But working undercover in that unit taught me camaraderie. It taught me to let my wall down. These guys saw I had paperwork on my desk that was due the next day. They'd nudge me and say, Renee, make sure you turn that in. It wasn't this, this, I guess, visceral environment that was toxic, and it was competitive. And I really learned to bring my guards down. We learned from each other. We helped each other. I felt at home in a group of men. Women, can I tell you, ladies, I have never had that dynamic amongst a group of my female peers. So it was very eye-opening. And there had to be trust in that unit because I worked in an undercover capacity. When you work in gangs, we worked in a HIDTA building, and you work with feds from FBI, DEA, Secret Service. And I was asked to do a lot of cases because, again, for those of you who weren't on the call and you just joined, my background, I started out working in a prison. And prior to that, I worked in a migrant community. I learned communication skills at a very fast pace from a very diverse community. So working undercover and also having a background in drama and theater really helped me work in these cases. So I got to work with Homeland Security. I got to do what we call TFO, that's a task force officer. They will select you. They'll vet you through Washington, D.C. and get you clearance to work cases overseas. I got to work in the Caribbean where we had a ton of kilos that were coming in through our ports. And through meeting some of the people in this rank structure of this organization, I got in pretty quickly and we were able to go overseas and stop some kilos from coming over here into South Florida. So I'm very proud of that work, but I'm mostly proud of the men that just encouraged me in my unit and always had my back. It's nothing like knowing you're in a work environment where you don't have to watch your back. There's comfort. People want to come to work and feel safe. When you don't feel safe in your workplace, it messes with everything around you. So I appreciate that time. That time was short because I put in for the sergeant's exam. And for those who've been on the call, I've probably talked about 6 jobs I've had. And I didn't even go back to when I was 14, starting out working in a senior facility where I learned a lot from our folks who are our seniors that were in their last days. And they saw fit to drop some very wise nuggets on a 14-year-old girl who was just handing them their food, who worked in the kitchen. So my life experience has definitely shaped me. So from working in senior facilities, from working with migrant communities in a prison, a jail, and now as a law enforcement officer working undercover, I harnessed and pulled and channeled all of those experiences to where I am now. But when I was leaving the gang unit, working undercover, that had an expiration date. I did not want to have another child in my life getting pregnant in high school. I always ask when I have some friends from high school or see young women who just have kids back to back, I'm like, I was traumatized enough to wait 20 years before I got pregnant again. So I met my husband at the time, and I have twin girls that are 7 years old. So my children are 20 years apart. My son's 27. Corey lives in Boulder, Colorado. And that's the one that I got pregnant with in high school, the one that made me a mom. And my twins, Noah and Ava, are 7 years old. So I'm parenting from completely 2 different perspectives. But I got pregnant with the twins when I was in a gang unit. Perfect timing. I got promoted to the rank of sergeant, and I became a first line leader. I don't know how many people in leadership roles are on this call, but first line leadership is the biggest leap you will make in leadership, because you are no longer just managing yourself. You are responsible for a lot of people. And that was a very huge learning curve for me. And again, I had men that were saying, we want Renea to come work for us. And I was lucky, and I don't believe in luck. I would say I was extremely blessed. The stars lined up and I was where I needed to be. The first time I had a woman who saw fit to give me an opportunity, it was based on what she had heard about my work ethic. It's our now Undersheriff Nicole Anderson. She says, I don't know you, but I've heard a lot about you, and I would love for you to come work for me. And I thought, oh, okay, what am I going to be doing? My background's investigations, detectives, guns. I bought all type of firearms, dope. She was like, community policing. I was like, say what? Like, cops who've dealt with narcotics always saw community policing officers or deputies as party planners with guns. Like, they don't do the real police work. So I thought, and I had to have a conversation with myself and say, look, you have newborn babies. Again, a single mom for a second time. Their father wanted us to move to California. He became a police chief there. I went out there for a few weeks and I knew that that was not my calling. I knew it like I know my name, and I encourage women all the time. Sometimes we end up going so far off of our life path because we're following someone else's dream. When we get quiet, we can truly know where we belong. And I was in California for a few weeks, and I knew with every fiber in my body, I was not on my path anymore. I didn't feel like I was connected there. I felt far away from what I should be doing. And I made a very difficult decision to move back to Florida, which would make me a single mom for the second time in my life. So I did that, and I did it with a lot of courage. I'm thankful for my mother. She said, you come home, I'll move in and help you with the twins. You've worked so hard to leave your career with only a few years left to retire. So I did. I came back. I got promoted to the rank of sergeant, and Colonel Anderson brought me into her unit, and I was ecstatic to be there. This is where leadership was not as easy as I thought it was. Some people will tell you how they can do leadership so well. If I was in charge, I'd do this and that. Well, let me tell you, I had some very hard learning curves. Working in a space with other leaders, you learn that you all have different personalities, right? We all don't lead the same. And when we can't get these pesky humans to do exactly what we want them to do, that's where the struggle comes in. And I learned you are not going to make anybody change. Change comes from within. And most leaders suffer slow career death by trying to change people around them instead of adapting and making the necessary changes within the organization to get the people who are going to do the job in your space and building a team of people who want to be there. And I know for you women who've been executives and leadership, you know exactly what I mean. I came into a space and I worked for another female who was in leadership. And I had some reservations, but I thought, you know what? I think I'm a likable person. I meet people, I make friends easily. You're talking to a girl who's had to move from Kansas, Germany, Texas, Louisiana, learn to line dance, swim, learn a little German. Like, I think my travels have made me resilient. And that can be a false sense of I can win anybody over. Well, folks, there are some people, I don't care what you do, you are not going to change their mind when they are set about not liking you. Has nothing to do with you. It's a self issue. So this female that I got to work for, I remember the first day I had to meet them. Somebody took me over to her and they said, hey, I want you to meet, our new sergeant. This person turned around and looked at me from my face, my eyes, down to my feet, back up. I was dressed nice. I think I was looking cute, ladies, like at least in my mind, I thought I was. And the way she looked at me told everything in my chest, like just dropped to my stomach, because I said, wow, that was the coldest welcome I ever received from a human being. And I worked in a prison, so keep that in mind. And it was yikes. And I thought all those reservations I had about working for females in leadership came rushing back in. But I was determined to stay positive. I'm going to make this person like me. They're not going to have a choice but to like me. I was wrong. I was very, very wrong. That by far was the best, worst experience of my life. And I'll explain why. Sometimes when we're in the middle of whatever the challenge is in our life, it feels awful. You don't want to hear your friends' positive self-talk and all this stuff because you're the one in it, you're sitting in it, you're living in it. How do I deal with this? And no matter what I did, this supervisor just was not aligning with me. And even after I found out there had been other versions of Renee that were women that worked in this space, and they all did not cut it with this individual. So I learned that it wasn't personal after a while, but I just did not know how to deal with it. And this is what's important to me now in the second chapter of my life, teaching other women, other young ladies how to deal with the adversities, navigating the mean girls in the workplace. I did not handle it well. Even though their behavior was not appropriate, my response was even more inappropriate. And it took a group of women after a year. I finally came to a boiling point where we had to have a talk. And I told this individual, this either I know I would have to go because I'm the subordinate, but I can't work like this. I confronted the situation. I listed everything that had been happening to me that I experienced in the workplace. And it was a man that stepped in that said, somebody told me about this situation and they were able to move me to a unit that I was better suited for. A male in a law enforcement agency came to my rescue when I had conflict with a woman. As I'm telling you all the history of my career, the evolution, remember, there have been men that have been my allies. That was something that I had great appreciation for, but I also was very saddened by that because I know I wasn't the only one dealing with this. And I started talking to other young women when they heard how I kind of defeated my dragon. Did I really defeat them? I got moved, but it was the best move for me. And I talked to these young ladies about what my mentors, a group of female police chiefs in Miami, I drove down to Miami from Broward once a month, and they poured into me. They gave me really good nuggets of things that I should have done better, did wrong, and how, if I ever did that again or had that experience, how to deal with it. But more importantly, they taught me to be the leader that I always wanted in a female. So my mission has been that if I ever was trusted with leadership, a leadership position, I was going to be a woman that changed another young woman like me mind about working for women. So I had a lot of young ladies call me. Everybody by now heard about what happened with me. And I was able to talk to some women for an hour on the phone, 2 hours, heard women cry, just the trauma of not being treated well and having that mean girl syndrome. And it was from that space, talking to all these women, I had a sergeant that told me, why don't you just do this already? You already teach. I've been an adjunct instructor at Broward College. This July will be 10 years. FIU, I'm alumni. I have my master's degree from there. And they invited me back to teach a workshop called The Art of Public Speaking, helping people use their voice and leverage their degree. Because if you can't land the interview or get past your fear of public speaking, it hinders you in many different areas of your life. So I'm very proud to have been invited back to teach that workshop over the summer. And now in my private business, that is what I do. My sergeant encouraged me to take this from phone conversations and take the show on the road. And there are so many women outside of law enforcement that need your help, that have been going through the exact same things in their personal careers or lives. So I got through that situation. And what that situation with that female supervisor taught me is she was my best teacher. I could say that now because, man, I had a lot of names for her back then and it wasn't best teacher. But she by far, now looking back, has been my best teacher, because what I learned from that space is if you ever encounter anyone in life that has the ability to trigger you and send you into a frenzy, that is your best teacher, because they have shown you that you have yet learned to master yourself. And when I learned to master myself, the world around me changed. When you move around with this energy of everybody's against me, everybody's treating me horribly, and you're speaking and walking in victimhood, you're going to get more of that, and you're going to get more of that. You're going to meet more of those mean people, and they're going to keep coming. So nothing really changed. I learned to change my mind. I learned to see differently. And I learned the ability of self-assessment. And watching my leader at the time and how she treated me, she was a good, bad example of what I never wanted to be to another woman who I had leadership over in my unit. So from that space, I got double promoted. I don't believe in luck. Again, I was at the right place at the right time. I got an opportunity through FIU to go to Capitol Hill, got to meet some amazing people, conduct some amazing interviews of some of our elected officials in DC. And I was asked to come back early from my trip in DC to moderate a town hall with the sheriff, the new sheriff-elect. And I was like, I don't even know this sheriff. We just lost our previous sheriff. What's happening? And a friend said, please do this, because if this town hall doesn't go well, a lot of us don't know if we'll have a job. Change comes when you have new leadership. So I flew back on a red eye, got here, and I moderated a town hall. And the new sheriff, our now Sheriff Tony, got an opportunity to see me speak. And he said, who is this young lady? And they were like, oh, that's Renee, and somebody told him who I was. He invited me to do a couple of more town halls for him. And on the fourth town hall, I was called down to our headquarters to meet with our sheriff. And I'm thinking, okay, what happened? What is this about? I went into his office and he said, look, got an opportunity to see you speak. I mean, we're in a predominantly Jewish community. You and I are the only two people of color in the room. And these people were lining up to talk to you. I want you to represent this agency in the community. You have a voice, you have something to say, and I want them to see women in these roles speaking from a place of intelligence and experience. And I thought while he was telling me all of this, there's always an ask, right? He's now the new sheriff. He's going to have to run for office and be elected because he was appointed. He wants me to come back here as a sergeant. What he did was something that I wish more women would do. He didn't offer me a position just to be in his, I guess, space as a sergeant. He put money on the table and said, I want to double promote you to the rank of captain. That can only be done by the sheriff. It's not done very often for women. We have been around for over 115 years, and that is not common. So I am a person of many words. And when he said that, I covered my mouth. I was like, oh my, are you sure? I said, there are going to be so many angry people. And what I give this young man, because I'm older than him, I could say that, I give him credit in a new leadership role. He did something that was brave and bold and said, I don't care what they're going to say. I see a need and I see a person who can fill that need, and I'm going to make it worth your while. And he double promoted me. What does promotion mean for women in male-dominated environments? It means that we now have a space that we could create more room and leave the door cracked and open for the other woman coming behind us. It means that we can be that woman in the room who has to mansplain things to the guys in the room who don't understand things from a woman's point of view. It also meant more money. When we talk about the gap in pay for women in private sector, I'm fortunate to be in government. We have pay scales, but if you don't get promoted, what does it matter? You can't reach that top scale. So for him to double promote me and put money into me and my family's pockets and help my pension spoke volumes about what leaders should be doing when they find the right talent and the right people for the position. And that was done by a male. So the theme throughout me walking you through my career to where I am now as a woman who holds the rank of captain within this agency, but also as a woman who has a side business. As a new entrepreneur of 2 years, I decided to leverage my talent, and instead of always teaching for other institutions, to teach for myself so I can make my messaging what I want it to be for organizations. I've taught to law firms, firefighters, C-suites, wine companies. And in that, they've given me the ability to have the messaging that will resonate with their staff. And I could say of all of those companies I've taught to, I am proud to say now that there are women in this space that in private sector that have referred me for business, for public speaking and teaching and training. So I do see the evolution of what women and our roles are in leadership and how women are starting to step into the fold and bring other women along with them and not just be the only one in the room. And I could proudly say now, having gone through that experience, dealing with my mean girl in the workplace, I am eternally grateful to her because right now I'm making a nice penny on the side. And I said one day when I hit a certain amount, I definitely may write her a check and give her a thank you letter, because had I not gone through that difficult situation, what would I be talking about? It was meant for me to go through that, as awful as it was. And without going into details, just know that nobody deserves to come to work and walk on pins and needles. Nobody deserves to go to any workplace and have to always worry about what they say and how they say it out of fear of being fired, terminated, or transferred. And when women, especially women in leadership, create those spaces for any human being, male or female, we're not operating in our purpose. And the leadership that we were entrusted in has been broken. Understand that there are many, when we talk about mean girls, the play Mean Girls, which some of you have seen, these mean girls were in high school. I tell people, where do mean girls go when they leave high school? Into the workplace. And if that behavior is not unchecked, if they don't have the foundational wherewithal from their home space on how to just be a decent human being and treat people well, I didn't have to go to any emotional intelligence course for that. My family taught me those core values of how to treat people. And in the play, they said something that was so profound. Calling me ugly doesn't make you pretty. calling me dumb or stupid does not make you smarter. And yet we spend and invest so much time in tearing others down when we can get busy investing in ourselves. I'm a lifelong learner. I tell people my only function is love. I couldn't say that years ago. In law enforcement, we were taught you got to be tough. I've made plenty of arrests. I've taken many people off the street that were not doing the right thing. And I don't shy away from saying that. But by far right now, I thought, wow, we talk about all the arrests we have. Working in the community space right now, I chair our social justice committee for the sheriff's office. I sit on a couple racial equity councils. The best feeling in the world over making an arrest and adding to the numbers is how many people did you help throughout your career? And in this space, you make an arrest and it takes you a year to work these long cases, and you get the satisfaction of bringing justice to a family that lost a loved one or had property stolen. But when you help people in the community and help your peers, you get that satisfaction every day. You don't have to wait to solve a case to do that. It's something you can do right now from where you sit or where you stand. So the play was very profound. As I said, thank you so much to the Broward Center, because sitting in that play, I was surrounded by some of my female peers that are entrepreneurs, some work in law enforcement, but we also saw young teenagers in there. And I thought this story needs to be told. And everybody is not into drama or theater. They're not going to see a play. But my personal mission for my company is to go out and teach and educate leaders and how we should be treating one another. Yes, it's women-centered, but men have told me, why are you doing this just for the ladies? We need it too. So I created a program or presentation called Toxic Work Environments. We all need to learn how to treat each other a little bit better. And I'm not looking for perfection, because I'm a recovering perfectionist, and being a perfectionist don't mean that you're a good person. You could be a perfectionist and your perfectionism is stressing everybody around you, driving them crazy. And you lose intellectual property. You lose really good staff because of poor leadership. You know that saying, people don't leave organizations, they leave bad bosses or bad leaders. That is so true. So what can we do as women to support one another, to help bring one another along, to train one another, but also not be that foot on someone's neck, afraid that they're coming for your position. What is for me will never pass me by. I believe that with all my heart. If I didn't get the position, it wasn't mine for me to have at the time. And I've had women who've gotten promoted and got in positions. I go out of my way because of my past experience with women to call them, to have coffee with them, to ask, what can I do for you? How can I help you? I learned that from men when I got promoted. Let's have lunch. How can I help you? So I'm learning a lot from the men that have mentored me. And my number one goal right now is to change the dialogue of how women treat one another and ask the question, what can I do for you? It is by far the best feeling in the world when I look at some of these young, beautiful girls that are coming out of the academy and they deal with hate because they happen to be young and beautiful. I'm 46. We had our time, ladies. Let it go. These girls have a right to be here. And if they show up cute, all the better. Treat them like a younger sister. Treat them like that's your niece or even your child. I'm mentoring cops that are my son's age or younger. And that is something that I don't take lightly, because I remember how I was greeted by the older women in the institution when I dared to come in my 20s and just show up smiling. So I am absolutely going to be a part of the change. That is my personal mission, is to be the anti-mean girl. I love what you all do at Women of Tomorrow. I had the great honor to speak. I was in a law enforcement capacity in uniform at Broward College some years ago when Colleen Lockwood was with the organization, and she invited me to speak. And Nikki Mohan, she was our MC, and I run into Nikki often, and she and I talk and have this same conversation about women and how we can help one another. So I had a PowerPoint presentation, but I figured, you know what? I'm a person who just goes with the flow, and it felt more natural to talk to you like this. So we have some time, and if anybody has an experience that they've dealt with women, or something that they're going through, please, please, please share. If you have any questions for me right now, I know they gave me an hour. Ask, I'm here to answer them for you. And I just thank you for your time.
Renee, I'll chime in. Well, if anybody has a question, please go ahead and speak. But I just want to say I'm taking something away. I do want to thank the mean girls in my life, just as much as you do, because they do make us better. They absolutely do make us better. Doesn't mean that time is not a difficult time, like you said, but it definitely is. I'm taking that one away. And I do also vouch to bring other women along with me. I want to. I would, that's something that makes me excited. I think that if you love mentoring, that should be something that that comes in ease. And yeah, those are two great takeaways for me. So thank you. There is a question. Michaela has a question that says, if you have any specific tips on how to improve those difficult workplace relationships, please share. I'm currently going through with this with 2 female managers, and it is rough.
Oh, I like that question. So let me speak to that. Michaela, let me tell you, when I say I'm sending you some virtual hugs, because it's one thing to have one, but it's another to have 2. You feel like you're taking it from both sides. And when it's 2 against 1, that's no fun. It's hard enough with 1. So dealing with it with the managers, I want to just quickly talk about something, Michaela, I want you to read up on. It's called the Queen Bee Syndrome. I don't know how many of you have heard of that, but it is something that has been studied in Toronto, Canada, and also the University of Arizona. What really saved me, Michaela, was going to the science, right? Because when we don't know why something's happening, that's where the pain and the stress comes from. Like, why is this happening to me? And then when you read up on it, and it's actually something that people have done research on, it gave me such a better understanding. So the Queen Bee Syndrome is basically, it's one thing to have the mean girl in the workplace that's your coworker and you're just catty, but what happens when the mean girl becomes your boss? That's when you get the Queen Bee Syndrome. The Queen Bee Syndrome is the woman who does not want to promote and lift up other women. They feel this superior sense of, I am the woman in the room and I won't share this space with anyone else. They also can abuse their authority. They have this alignment with men. It's called the like me syndrome, where they need to align themselves with people that they see as the power structure. And men in some organizations are seen as the authoritative power structures. Science has shown that men will, if a man speaks, more people will hear his voice over yours. If you ever wonder why you've sat in a meeting and you said something and then Tom says it next and everybody thinks it's a great idea and you're like, I literally just said that, it's because people think about it. When mom comes home, what does she say? I'm going to tell your dad, because a dad's tone hits differently with children. And because we're raised in those dynamics, it absolutely plays out in the workplace where people hear men more than women. So for women to be seen as that power structure, they have to show the men that I'm not going to promote her because she's the woman. Matter of fact, I'm going to be tougher on her to show you that I'm like you. That's a like me power syndrome. So some of the things that you can do, and I think it's important because if we all just sat and commiserated about our mean girls, we are in victimhood. I believe in not staying stuck. We create our own destiny. And if this is showing up for you, Michaela, take it as this is meant to show you something. And when you get past this struggle and get to the next level, you, like me, will see, that's why I went through that. So what I would recommend you do is something that was the hardest thing for me to do. I grew up where you defended yourself. If somebody said something disrespectful to you, you're not talking to me like that. Who are you talking to? And it's this back and forth. When they're your supervisors, you never win. You never win. Because believe it or not, folks, some people slip into leadership positions because they have narcissistic tendencies, even sociopaths. When you look at some CEOs of corporations and say, how did they get there? This person's awful, because they're willing to do what those of us who have a bleeding heart can't do. But now and then you might have somebody like Myra, like myself, we know and learn how to navigate the game. It's the art of war. How do you come in without showing them that you're very kind and empathetic and in tune to people? And you come in the back door because you know you need to be there and you can help more people than you can by being the person on the outside crying about what happened to me. I had to learn the hardest lesson was to turn down. I say turn down because in Miami, you say something to me, we're going to turn up. I'm going to say something back to you. And when it's your supervisor, that's called what? Insubordination. When you're smart and you're intelligent and you're a threat to these type of queen bee women, you're never going to beat them in a ground fight. It has to be chess. You need to be playing chess while they're playing checkers. And a part of that is when they know you're intelligent, when you come to the table and you're smart and men take notice, they can't open your brain and take all of what you acquired in education. So what's the next thing they could take from you? Your character. They will beat you for your cool. They will find your triggers. They will say things. If you've shared anything in the office space that's personal and private, they will use it against you. Find your tribe. Keep your business to yourself. If you and your boyfriend, your husband, your wife, whomever are going through it, that does not belong in the workspace. Go to work, be pleasant, smile. They feed off of people's misery. I literally know some women that just, when they have broken someone down and cried, it's like they eat their tears for lunch and it's fuel. Never let them see you sweat. I don't care if you go to your car, go wherever and cry, never let them know that they're getting to you like that. Find a trusted group of women that you could talk to. These mentors brought me out of the space. And what was crazy was I kept talking about what this woman did to me. They were like, stop. Let's talk about what you're doing. Let's talk about how you could show up better. At the end of the day, you don't have to react and respond to everything. And like I said earlier, some of you weren't on the call. Some of these mean girls, those two women you're dealing with are going to be your best teachers, Michaela, because what they're going to show you is if they have the ability to make you feel any type of way, make you respond or react in any type of way, they have shown you that you have not yet mastered yourself and you need to go back and do some more work. I happened to run into one of these people that I'm talking about that was the mean person. And in the past, I would see this person and I would pretend not to be upset, but inside I felt some kind of way. And you know what? I had to give myself time because that was a very hard situation to work through with a supervisor like that. And now I could see that person out and about and I say hello. I'm like, girl, I'm making so much money teaching this outside of here off of you. Thank you. But I now understand that after I left, she had 3 more people that were treated the same way, that left her unit in the same way. And then, Michaela, I thought, oh, it wasn't all about me, because when it feels so personal, that's where it hurts. This is just who she is. She was like that before I came. She treated people like that after I left. And for whatever reason, she came to this earth to be that person. She's been a teacher for a lot of us. And if you leave a person like that space and you do not learn the lesson, you're going to meet another version of her in a different body, in a different form. So work on you. We all have duality, yin and yang. That's Chinese philosophy. Up, down, right, left, everything has an opposite end. If she was a mean girl, was there ever a time that I was not kind? And going through this experience taught me to sit back and say, well, while I'm sitting here in my victimhood, who did I not treat so well? I mean, I was always a person in high school who stood up for the little people, but was there a time that I ever laughed at somebody or made fun of how somebody was dressed? The honest answer is yes, because when we are not evolved and we're petty and uneducated, we may think we're doing it right, but I've seen women with all their boobs hanging out and I'm like, why is she dressed like that? I didn't say it loud to hurt her feelings, but I had a comment and a judgment about someone and it didn't make me a better person for having it. Sometimes keep it to yourself. Or when you look at someone, you have that thought, you know what is that about? Let me check on me and see what is that about? Because the way she's dressed has nothing to do with me. So I would encourage you, Michaela, read. When you educate yourself and understand a problem that you're having and understand you're not going to change them, you're not going to be able to wish it away. You are going to have to stand in this. You're going to have to figure out if this is where I want to be. And a lot of people say, leave. Well, I'm in government. We had to get 25 years to get a retirement. Who's going to leave their job after 19 years meeting a mean person? So some people have to stay. But if you are in an industry where you don't have to stay, preserve your peace of mind and go where you are appreciated and not tolerated. So for some of us, we can leave. For some of us, we can't. But find a trusted mentor, Michaela, that you can pour into, that you don't have to worry about things getting back. And also that they can leave you, when you leave their space, you feel motivated to go and deal with these women. I had a group of friends, they were just as petty as me. We would sit around at happy hour and talk about our mean girl. And even though we got it off our chest, I left feeling like there was no resolution. Nothing changed. We just all don't like the same person. Where's the movement? And it took me being around women who were a lot smarter than me, had been in leadership a lot longer than me, and knowing that I thought I know it all. It took me to get to my 40s to know I don't know nothing. And when you empty yourself in that way, where you reserve the right to change your mind, that you might have been wrong about some things, your whole world opens up for you. So I would encourage you to read, Michaela. There's so many articles on Queen Bee syndrome, and you will read one tonight, because I know you're probably ready to start Googling, and you'll say, aha. And when you read it and look at all the case studies around the world, you're like, oh, this is a thing. These women exist. It's a syndrome. It ain't about me, it's about them. And that's when you better understand, when doctors can better understand what's making you sick, then they know how to treat you. So when you better understand what makes these women the way they are, you can better understand how to deal with them and never let them see you sweat, and treat them with kindness, because that pisses them off beyond anything you know. I am going to stay in my light. If the whole stadium is dark, I'm going to stand here with my little phone and my lighter. I'm going to be my light. I create my light. And when you start creating that type of energy around yourself, they can't come in that force field. They can't come. I don't care how they control your days off, how they control anything. I control me, and what's for me is for me. You can't take nothing away from me that wasn't meant for me to have. And you have to move with that type of security and energy, because when you do, they don't change, but the world you see changes. I hope that answered your question. It was long, but I could tell you so much about how I arrived at that question that you asked, because I had to ask that of my mentors too.